Good morning and welcome to the Planning Hearing Officer hearings for January 16th, 2013. My name is Laura Stotler and I'm serving as Planning Hearing Officer today. We have 4 cases on the agenda today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. The agenda, staff reports, and recommendation for each of today's cases can be found on the city's website. On today's agenda, we have conditional use permits, we have parking reduction permits, and that's it, conditional use permits and parking reduction permits. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. For parking reduction permits, applications for parking reduction permits shall meet the procedures and criteria set forth in Section 30.32070A and Table 30.32B with qualifying project features. If the evidence presented in the application and at this hearing meets the criteria, then the Planning Hearing Officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. All of the findings are included in the staff report that is available online, and we've also distributed copies to the people here in the audience today. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, placed in the local newspaper, and also posted on the city's website. So the hearings will proceed as follows. First, I'll read a description of the requested entitlements. Then the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or opposition to the application and any interested parties will then be asked to come forward to speak, stating both name and address, and will be given a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by the preceding speakers, and the applicant will have a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission, or a decision may be rendered at this meeting. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or who have submitted written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeal provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Permit Services Center located in room 101 of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker forms which have been provided by the front door and submit it to our planning assistant. And these are the forms. I know I've received some of them, but if there's anybody else who wishes to speak, please provide a form. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the hearing are being recorded as part of the public record. So first I'll start off with reading the first case of the day. It's located at 2226 Risa Drive, conditional use permit number 1233550. The applicant is William Stemke. Case planner is Roger Kiesel. This is an application for a conditional use permit to construct a new 2,400 square foot 2-story single-family residence on a vacant lot having less than the required minimum lot width of 80 feet, measured 15 feet from the front property line, and is located in the R1R restricted residential zone, described as Lot 17, tract number 14960, and the width of the subject lot is 60 feet. And with that, I'd like to ask for a presentation from a case planner.
Good morning. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 2,400 square foot 2-story single-family residence on a vacant lot located at 2222 Risa Drive between Barra and Calafia. The lot is zoned R1R with a floor area ratio District 2. The width of the subject lot is 60 feet, as you mentioned, and the zoning code prescribes that in the R1R zone, approval of the conditional use permit is required when a lot is less than 80 feet in width. Staff believes that the 4 required findings can be made and recommends approval of the conditional use permit. The proposed use will be consistent with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. The subject site has a land use designation of very low density residential with a corresponding R1R zoning classification. The land use designation and zoning classification are intended to preserve and protect low density residential neighborhoods. The proposal to construct a new single-family residence and its associated use are consistent with the general plan and zoning. The neighborhood in which the subject site is located is entirely entirely residential, and except for areas adjacent to Verdugo Road, consists of single-family homes. The circulation element classifies Risa Drive as a local street, and the primary function of this type of street is to provide access to adjacent residential properties. This type of street usually serves the residential needs of the immediate community with low volumes of traffic to and from collector and arterial streets. The proposed project will be consistent with the circulation element. The open space and conservation element doesn't identify this site for parkland or open space. The proposed single-family residence will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare or the environment. The construction of the proposed residence would involve minimal grading and would not impact surrounding uses or the character of the neighborhood, as many of the lots are already less than the minimum 80-foot lot width in this zone. Adjacent lots to the subject site are developed with single-family houses. Therefore, there is no ability to combine lots to make the subject site comply with the minimum 80-foot lot width. Oak trees will be preserved, and conditions of approval from the urban forester will be added to the project to ensure construction of the residence will not adversely impact these trees. The proposed single-family house will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of the surrounding property. As previously mentioned, the site and the surrounding area are zoned for single-family residential development and are, in fact, developed with this kind of use. The proposed single-family house is consistent with the surrounding development and should not impede any redevelopment of nearby homes. The neighborhood is already fully developed and will not impact the normal development of the surrounding property since it's already developed. There are adequate public and private facilities for the proposed single-family residence. Given that the area is an established community and has been developed for many years, public and private utilities are in place and will be available for the proposed development. Glendale Water and Power did not cite concerns regarding the proposed project. Risa Drive, as I mentioned before, is a local street designed to carry traffic generated by residential uses. It is not expected that the demand for utilities or impact on traffic circulation in the area will be elevated to any significant degree as a result of this project. Approximately 68% of the site will be landscaped, which is well above the minimum required of 40%, and approximately 70% is ungraded, also well above the minimum required 40% in the R1R zone. The proposed 2,400 square foot house includes an attached two-car garage, which complies with the parking requirements for a home of this size. Discretionary applications in the R1R zone need to take into consideration consistency with the Glendale Municipal Code, the Hillside Design Landscape Guidelines, compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, preservation of natural features, and overall architectural style. The ranch-style homes in the neighborhood are sited at the front portions of the lot, have both front and rear garages, and generally contain modest setbacks. The proposed house is consistent with this site planning and is located in the front of the lot with a front-loaded garage and 10-foot side or interior setbacks, which are the minimum in this zone now. The sloped roof on the proposed residence is similar to roofs in the existing homes in the neighborhood. The two-story height of the proposed residence is different from the predominant 1 or 1.5 story homes in the area. However, the proposed horizontal siding and the roof between the first and second floors of the residence emphasizes horizontality, which is an important feature of ranch homes. The proposed project requires minimal landform alteration since the residence is proposed on the relatively flat portion of the site. The rear steeply sloped portion of the lot remains untouched. The proposed residence will be sited similarly to many of the existing homes in the neighborhood, and very little grading will occur. Finally, the city's policy has evolved through the years on the relevance of architectural style in such a way that a particular style of residence is less important than carrying out a chosen style in a quality manner. A new house need not necessarily be of the same design as neighboring homes to be compatible with them. Ranch is the predominant style of architecture in this neighborhood. The majority of the homes are modestly sized and are 1 or 1.5 stories in height. The proposed residence has many features of the ranch style homes, including the use of both siding and stucco, sliding windows, and a horizontal orientation. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just want to confirm that there are other lots that are similarly sized in the area. They appear to be, the whole area appears to be pretty homogeneous in terms of the size of the lots and the siding. And I did have a question on the majority of the homes. Do they have 10-foot setbacks? Because it appeared that many of them may be smaller.
I think the majority of them had less setback. A new house in the R1R zone, minimum setbacks for the interior are 10 feet, though, so they need to comply with that 10 feet.
Okay.
But I believe most of the homes in the neighborhood are less than that.
Okay. The one thing I would like to also comment on is I did get a copy of those letters that you referred to from the neighbors.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. During the last week, I received a couple letters from neighbors expressing some concerns, as well as I spoke with someone on the phone who also raised a couple concerns. The letters or emails are in the file. The phone call, I have some notes in the file.
Okay.
On that.
And the oak trees, they're all being preserved?
Correct.
Okay. Just verifying that. All right, with that, I have no further questions. I would like to call forward the applicant, William Stemke, please.
William Stemke at 366 Brockmont, Glendale, California. Excuse me. The proposed site, which I was actually in escrow way back in April, before we closed escrow, the present or the former owner of the property agreed to clean out the back oaks. They'd never been touched, and there was a huge amount of either poison oak or poison ivy. So the individual spent almost $5,000 pruning all the oak trees on the property with an arborist with permits, and even the ones way back up the hill because they were overgrowth and it was a real fire hazard because of the underbrush and the poison oak and poison ivy. Plus, I have a couple of employees that if they, and we have a couple of dogs that kind of go with the job. And the dogs and the poison oak, when people touch it, they get infected. So that's one of the main concerns always when I work on a hillside is to watch the poison oak or poison ivy for the employees. So the man spent the money on the oaks. All the oaks on the, like I said, on the property won't be touched. One more might have to be pruned a bit, but that's up to the arborist, and we'll go through design review on that. I tried to make the house. The architect is Jennifer McIsaac, which I've known her father-in-law for 50 years, and her when she was a little girl. But anyway, She spent a lot of time on the project, around the house and the neighborhood, going over, trying to melt in to make sure it didn't stand out, and also to make it a house, that was livable too. So we've got a few extra features in the back, which probably hasn't been brought up. I've got a small atrium off the kitchen, which faces the oaks, which, as far as inside the house, would be real nice for a person, because you're in the kitchen, so you're looking out at glass up into the oak trees. And there's a small sunken patio also in the rear off the den. As well, when we place the windows, if you notice on the elevations, nobody looks into anybody else's window or down on them or anything else. It's well designed for privacy, but then again, design review goes over that, so I won't bring it up now. But it's a good design. I've built a number of houses in Glendale, and the one I'm living in now, for instance, and so we really try to work with the neighbors in the city on it. As far as grading goes, like the man said, Roger said, that the grading will be minimal, and we use small dump trucks. 10-wheelers are called. They only hold about 8 yards of dirt, and that way you don't have a lot of congestion in the area. And then the grader I use is named Ron Polson. He's worked for me for the last 40 years. He's done a number of jobs in Glendale and never had a problem with anybody. He's very, very conscientious. Excuse me. Also, as far as the water table goes, as far as any geology so far, I haven't found any water problems. We're also going to start after the rainy season. The rainy season is normally from October to March, and won't be starting till in May or June after we get through plan check and design review. So that shouldn't be any litigation as far as the water moving around. The other concern, somebody's made something about the fire, that there was access up to the mountain. I guess some time back there was a fire there. Well, most of the houses there have a 5-foot setback between their property line and the house, and the new code is 10 foot. Plus, at 2004, I believe, Glendale City owns an easement there, according to the neighbor. It's got 2 fences, and there's a road goes right up the hill.
Please. Thanks.
Right up the hill for any fire equipment, where they'd use that versus the property here, because obviously a road versus walking up that back of that hill. So that's about all I have to say.
Okay. I did have one question.
Okay.
Some of the letters that have come in talk about the fact that you're proposing a 2-story home.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the other homes in the area are single-story.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you go in with a 2-story home versus a single-story?
Well, mainly it's economics, but there's 5 houses within the 300-foot radius that I consider two-story. In fact, one of them down Heavy is a 3-story house. It's an apartment house. I found out later. It's 1608, I believe, is the address, and it's a 3-story, and it's in that 300-foot radius. So that's why. Oh, thank you very much.
I noticed you also have a lot of oak trees. I was wondering if that figured into your decision to go up rather than out, because that would be taking out trees.
Well, yes, that and the hill. You wouldn't start grading that hill. You'd have huge retaining walls. There's no retaining walls going into the property. They're very costly, and then you have to decorate them. So the new codes are. But also we kept it within the 15-foot setback in the front, and because we want to stay away from the oak tree in the rear, the main one on the property. In fact, it's the only one in the building area is the one on the right side, upper right. The rest of them are up higher, and then we have one on the left belongs to our neighbor, but that's on their property. So, but it's kind of centered right in there. It'll work out well. And like I said, all the trees have been pruned through an arborist earlier this year, so they look good now.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, I'd like to call up, I'm not sure if it's Tillen or Jillian Arakelian.
Actually, Ghislaine.
Oh, Jillian.
Yes. It doesn't matter if you say Tilan, but it's Ghislaine. Actually, my name is Ghislaine Arakelian and my husband is Zarman. We live on the 1830 Calafia Street in Glendale. It's just below the U-shaped house down there that you see. And I was not sure whether you would read any points of the letter, but I will just sum it up as far as the concerns it is. Obviously, it looks like they did their job in order to think about the oak trees, to go 2 stories. But as far as the privacy goes, I mean, our yard is there and our living room is there, so how the windows are gonna, not peep into our house all the time, that's one of the questions. And basically, we do, as far as being in a corner lot, we do receive a lot of rain and we don't have any problem with sliding. But how their digging is going to affect even our fence, where it is in between the 2 lots, and also...
The black wrought iron fence, that's yours?
I can show it here on the picture. It doesn't show in the picture, but there is...
Oh, don't touch it.
Like a fence over here.
With
You see
the
this?
oak tree right here? Okay.
This is our oak tree on
Right.
our land. Yep. So, I think for the safety of our home and any home there, whoever would live on that part of the lot, we do have a lot of wildlife. Coyotes come around. This is their route, basically. There are a lot of squirrels. They're mischievous. So kind of like what the digging would start being, we want to keep the fence because that's the way we are protected, especially at nighttime where their activities is a lot. So if they're putting a retainer wall, we would like to know, where it is, how it is being dug, and there's a water reservoir underground of that, if anybody has noticed it or not. But it would be good to know a soil report or geological, any report there is, because we are noticing even some water collecting around the corners of our lot, and we are a bit fortunate because our house is on the slab. But the other neighbor on the front of us, on the other corner side of the Calafia and Risa, has been noticing this water, and they are not on slab, they are on a hollow, so they have actually spend a lot of money in order to put a pump to drain it and things like that. So any digging or anything, we want to see how they are rerouting the water and the drainage is going to be so that it's not coming to our property. I have some pictures to show too. Basically, whenever you want it, so that I have taken pictures from like around the house and also showing actually where the water is. And normally during the rainy seasons, basically that water probably comes and percolates from under the ground and it comes to the surface. So I think to our property, that's one of the most important things, how the rerouting of the water and drainage is going to be. And we wouldn't have like any problem of sliding, basically. As for, it seems they have minimum digging, but anyway, again, how the fence is going to be protected and how we are not going to see any, effects of loosening of the maybe, soil or stones. They are holding up very good for now. But after the digging, probably it may affect, our property. We are on a hilly side, so we have a little bit of hill, and then there's this lot that they're gonna build, the home on. Another point is basically the oak tree. One is in our lot, and it's basically on the border of, the branches actually extend to the other side. So this is a very good protection for our, especially garage, which gets hot in the summer. It gives a good shade, and we would like to preserve it. So if they can explain, any digging would not affect the roots of the, oak tree so that it wouldn't dry up, basically. It's not on their land. I think other parts, probably neighbors brought out, and I put it in the letter too, as of the appearance and height of it, how high it goes. They didn't explain basically, how high is it. Most of the community I see, like even our neighbors, yours is 1.5 floor or is it two? It's considered 2 floor or 1.5 floor. So I think theirs seems to be a bit, taller. And also, I think everybody just wants to know how the construction would go and how long it would take. Ourselves, we have allergic to the dust and dust mites. So if they put some fabric, on the fence so that it wouldn't, pass so much dust into our property while they are doing their job, we would appreciate that. And also not workers, peeping into our property all the time. And hopefully they would be polite as far as, not to steal water or our garbage cans in order to put the trash in. But basically, most of the concern is the privacy, the rerouting of the drainage of the water and water reservoir underneath the ground, the oak tree, the privacy and how the windows are being opened, and as far as, not increasing the activity of wildlife into our property too. Because if they start digging, there's a lot of squirrels underneath, so we don't want to, them to just, come to our property instead. So as far as, what they're going to do, it would be best to have some other reports. I'll give you the pictures.
Sure.
Also, take a look at it. These are the actually waters that it is coming out the ground itself. It's not the rain standing
Is it
there.
coming from your yard or the neighbors?
It's the neighbors, basically, because we are down the hill, the water kind of comes and collects to the corner. And the other corner house here, these two have been experiencing the water, but this one is higher, this one is lower like us. So they have put actually water pumps and everything.
She can't hear you. That's why you need to speak into the mic.
I've heard even the other neighbor had sued basically the previous owner because they didn't disclose that there was this problem of the water. So we are disclosing it now. There is a water reservoir. They have to probably give a soil and geological report to know how much of the water is coming up and how effective it would be for them.
So if you want to turn these in, I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah, sure. This is the front of the house. This is the loft. This is it. And this is the oak tree here on our side. And these are the corner that it shows the water is basically coming. This is the wall between the other neighbor and us.
Okay.
And then as far as the fence goes, this is our fence. And this is our yard, so how the building is going to, look at. And this is our living room. And basically, again, this is the water coming from all there and, percolating up.
Okay.
And here, the last one, we could get the best picture that we can from the oak tree. The oak tree is well above our lot. It's not, unfortunately, as even as our, yard. It's pretty high, and it's in the same level as the other lot is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you need this back? Because we can make a photocopy. All right, otherwise we'll keep this and add it to the file. I do have your letter. Okay, thanks. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, I don't have any other cards. I'd like to call the applicant back, Mr. Stemke, if you'd like to address the comments that were raised.
I coughed up, so maybe I won't cough so much. As far as her concerns, the water, the geological, we need a report. Obviously, that's part of plan check. They'll tell you where the water table is and try to determine where it's coming from. But normally, a new house, all the new houses have to have gutters and downspouts, and they have to go through the street. They don't dump out on the lawn. They have to go through underneath the earth to the street in a non-corrosive device, meaning a pipe, either concrete or plastic. So what you're going to do is you're going to knock off of the lot now, the water you're getting to the ground table or to your house, you're going to knock approximately 1,200 cubic feet or square feet of water that normally goes in the ground is now going to go to Risa Drive without penetrating going to your house. As far as either wall on either side goes, we're not touching the walls. There's no retaining walls. There's foundation walls in the house. But as far as there isn't retaining walls, just holding back earth, only foundation walls. As far as the oak trees go, the code is you have to stay 1 foot as far as any disturbed ground, 1 foot from the drip line. So we're well within that. That's why we designed the house the right way it is. So it won't disturb the existing oak. The problem with the existing oaks now, they're used to that whole area being watered. Yeah, and oaks don't like a lot of water. Now the problem is when you take away X amount, then we have to figure out how to replace X amount. So, because your oak tree is actually behind a retaining wall, it's got to be 8 feet down to your grade. So it's kind of it's a weird place for oak tree because it's going to buckle that wall pretty soon. It's going to knock that wall down, and the tree will fall down, obviously, because it's just sticking up on top of the wall in the fence. So it's not a homegrown. It's kind of a bird dropped it, I guess. I guess that's all I had to say. That water concern. As far as the trash and the employees, I always give my cards out, and any problem at all, they come right back to them. So that's not a problem with the guys working. They're mainly all my employees, a few subcontractors. So that's about all I had on that.
Have you read the staff report and the findings and the proposed conditions of approval?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any concerns with those, or do you agree with them?
No, I agree with them.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
I just want to state that the concerns that were raised by the neighbors are addressed through oak tree permits, through permitting. Before you can get a grading permit, you have to go through engineering and submit proper reports. And as part of those reports and grading review, they do look at drainage, they look at soils. So that's actually a standard condition of approval. They also look at fugitive dust and what could go into the air. They also look at stormwater mitigation and dust that way. So the concerns that you raised are valid, but they are already addressed through our other codes. So that's why they're really not put on as a condition of approval. In terms of the oak trees, those are also addressed through a separate permitting. So I do hear your concerns, and they have been addressed in the staff report. And to the extent we can, we have addressed them in the conditions of approval, as was noted by the staff and also the applicant. The actual final design is subject to the design review board. They look at a lot of the issues such as privacy and the actual design of the home. But in terms of siting on the lot, that's something we review here, and whether it's proper to build on a 60-foot lot, based on the fact that the majority of homes in that area are built on 60-foot lots, and it looks like all the other issues have been addressed by the applicant through the conditions of approval. I am approving this project based on the conditions of approval that are in the staff report. And so that concludes this hearing item. And no, hearing's closed. But you may talk to the case planner. Okay, for the next case we have, it's located at 1111 South Central Avenue. This is actually one location with 3 different cases. The first case is conditional use permit number PCUP 1234377. For a billiard establishment, we have conditional use permit case number PCUP 1227779. That's a request to allow beer and wine service on site. We also have a parking reduction permit case number PPRP 1232237. The applicant is Lilit Devtayan. The case planner is Chris Baxter. This is an application for 2 conditional use permits to continue the existing billiards establishment while providing on-sale sales, service, and consumption of beer and wine, and a parking reduction permit to provide less parking than required by code. This is located in the C3 Commercial Services Zone, described as portion of 17-lot subdivision. And with that, I'd like to ask the case planner for a presentation, please.
Yes. Yes, Ms. Sutler. Okay, I'll be going through the staff report, which I believe the applicant has, and you're probably familiar with in some degree. As you mentioned, we have 3 cases. two conditional use permits, one for beer and wine, a second CUP for the billiards establishment, and the third for parking reduction. The property is located, if you look on the monitors and also up on the board, which is the front board, the property is located at the southwest corner of South Central Avenue and West Chevy Chase Drive. It's been it's in a shopping center, the proposed or the existing billiards facilities in the shopping center, and the shopping center's been there since 1960 in that time. There's 69 parking spaces that are located on the west side of the shopping center. The surrounding uses in the area are commercial to the north, south, and to the east side of the street, and on the left side of the screen, for instance, that's residential, but I believe those are parking garages immediately adjacent to the parking lot. And then there is a residential use on the southwest corner of that aerial photography. You'll see a building that fronts that parking lot down there. That's also a residential use on another property. There's also a couple of small dwelling units on this property in the northwest corner, right next to Chevy Chase. Okay, so anyway, staff is supporting the project. The primary reason the applicant is here is because they wanted to have beer and wine with their while they played billiards, and that triggered and they wanted to increase the number of seats. So when the project was first approved for a billiards establishment with the parking reduction back in 2010, the applicant asked to have a small little food service to provide sandwiches and other types of small meals for clients when they're playing pool. And the staff had a concern that we didn't want it to evolve into a restaurant type use. And so we limited the number of seats to 8. The reason is in our zoning code, if you have 8 seats or less, then that's considered a retail use. In our zoning code, the billiards hall is a retail use. Also, so we have a little conflict here, because if it was just a billiards hall, there is no restriction on the number of seats. You could have as many seats in there as you'd like. If you want a fast food restaurant, if you want a restaurant service and it to be considered retail, it has to be 8 seats or less. So we were like, well, so what do we do here? They have 2 types of uses, food and billiards. So we said, okay, we'll make it 8 seats or less. Now, a couple of years later, the applicants come back and said, we'd like to add beer and wine. We'd like to increase the number of seats. And we'd like the seats to be next to the pool tables. We have 13 pool tables, 2 seats apiece. If you have 2 players, one shoots, one sits down type thing. And a small table, these are kind of like taller tables and chairs, higher or, taller, higher, something appropriate for shooting pool. So we looked and discussed the issue, because we were working with this idea, food service, number of seats. And so the applicant said, these seats are only going to be right next to the pool table, and somebody can bring their beverage, whether it be alcohol or non-alcohol or a sandwich or whatever, and put it on the table. But up where the counter is by the food service, we'll only keep 8 seats there. So we've gone along with that idea. And however, it does trigger the parking reduction, because there's no change in the parking reduction other than the fact that there was a condition that limited the number of seats to 8. Now they're coming in with 34. That's inconsistent, so they have to reopen the case. And originally, the reason we did the parking reduction in the first place back in 2010 is because the location where the billiards was moving into back in 2010 was an office parking use. Billiards, as I said before, is a retail use. So they didn't, it didn't match, and therefore we required that they make up the difference. There was like space difference, 5 or 6 space difference at the time. Now there's no change in that. It's just this condition that we're dealing with. So staff has looked at a little parking survey that the applicant submitted that shows that when they open their business at 6 p.m. in the evening, most of the businesses in that shopping center close. As a retail type use, as billiards retail use, they require 22 spaces, and by 6 o'clock when they open, 31 spaces will be available because the rest of the place is closed down. Now, there are three other businesses that remain open till 8, but then after 8 o'clock, they have the full use of the parking lot, which there's 69. Take away 2 for the 2 residential in the northwest corner, they have 67 spaces completely for the billiards place. So when we look at that, we go through these findings in the staff report, and what I'll do is I'll just do the staff report. I won't go through each of the findings. I've tried to highlight this in the staff report in our analysis section. So we looked at the general plan, and we feel that a billiards establishment with alcohol sales and the additional seating and food is consistent with the general plan type use. This is a recreation use. There's not a lot of recreation type uses in South Glendale, and we feel that this is appropriate, and it is allowed by the general plan, the land use element of the general plan. Additionally, we feel that because it still is going to remain as a retail use, in which we will also have a condition that I can go into here later, that this is not going to increase traffic impacts both to Central Avenue and to West Chevy Chase. Both of these streets, one Central Avenue being a major arterial and Chevy Chase being a minor arterial, are amply able to handle retail traffic, and that's what they were built for, and that's what they're providing the service for right now. There's no new floor area being provided. There are not any changes being proposed for the parking lot design or number of spaces being limited. None of that is occurring here. So we're not anticipating any traffic or parking impacts in the neighborhood. Additionally, we feel that the noise element through the noise ordinance addresses noise impacts. We received comments from the police department and neighborhood services section that said that they do not have any code enforcement cases for the last 2 years for this property, for this particular business. We also have standard conditions restricting noise and smoking and other kinds of nuisance issues. So we have those are added to the approval. And additionally, the hearing officer, or whichever your position here, has continuing jurisdiction and can always review this should there be problems in the future. When we look at whether there be a detrimental impact on the neighbors, the police department and neighborhood services section did submit comments that said that even though they don't have code enforcement case for this property, they are concerned about the parking reduction because in the neighborhood, not specifically to the site, because I had conversations, there's not a parking problem on this site specifically, but there's a general concern that there's limited parking in this area, and so they feel that granting a parking reduction would negatively impact the commercial and residential areas. Now, we talked to traffic engineering, and we also received comments from them, and they don't have any what I would call undue problems in the neighborhood with parking surrounding this site in this neighborhood here. Other parts of South Glendale maybe, but around this site there isn't anything that they have on record that shows that people are coming into them on a regular basis asking for restricted parking on their streets. They don't. Okay, going through some of the other comments, some of the other findings in terms of there being an adverse impact on the neighborhood. The same sort of thing that ties in with the primarily the code enforcement, no code enforcement cases, the parking not being an impact on the neighborhood, at least according to traffic engineering, and certainly nothing on the site according to neighborhood services and the police department. There will also be these 31 parking spaces available after when the business opens at 6 o'clock, 67 available by 8 o'clock. And we feel that as far as this project, the final finding of a conditional use permit for both alcohol sales and billiards is, would the addition of these requests have any impacts on public and private facilities, and we don't feel that. Now, for the alcohol sales, there's an additional set of findings of fact that have to be addressed, and so to go through those very quickly, police department did say that the census tract where this business is located does exceed, the alcohol sales exceeds the citywide average, as well as the crime rate is higher. However, this neighborhood has a higher density of commercial and residential uses. There's higher concentrations of alcohol sales within the census tracts, and it would be expected that it would be higher in these areas than in lower density areas where it's mostly just residential without the commercial uses. We don't feel that this use, which has been in operation since 2010, this billiards use, by adding alcohol sales as an ancillary or secondary use, supplementary use for the billiards with food service, would negatively or adversely impact sensitive land uses such as schools or parks, hospitals, or the residential areas. And we do have conditions that are standard for noise, for smoking and things of that nature. Those are standard conditions that I mentioned previously. And we also feel, as we've noted before, that there will be adequate parking facilities that would be provided, primarily due to the survey that shows that most businesses will close when this business opens. So we are coming up with the finding that the beer, wine, food, and additional seating will serve a public necessity and convenience for the area. Now, regarding the parking reduction, very briefly, they have 3 findings, and in our analysis, we again support this. The primary issue, again, which I've already alluded to, is that the number of seats was restricted to 8 in the last parking reduction. That being said, it was because we wanted to maintain a retail type use. Of course, again, it does conflict with the billiards type use because there is no requirement for limited seating. So we're balancing those two. So we've added a condition that says that to ensure that the beer, wine, and food sales will be ancillary services or secondary or supportive services to the billiards. We have a condition that states that that less than 50% of the sales of that business can be beer, wine, and food, that the primary should be billiard sales. So we don't want a person walking in and just saying, turning it into a bar or restaurant. You want them to go, you want to play billiards, and you want to have something to eat with and drink with the billiards playing, that's great. That's what the applicant has told us they want, and that's what we're supporting. We feel that the intent of the parking regulations are being met because parking spaces are being provided. Again, that survey shows there will be 31 spaces by 6 o'clock in the evening, where 22 are required. And finally, we feel that the number of parking spaces provided does serve the intended and potential for future uses. There'll be ample parking spaces by 6 o'clock when they open, and by 8 o'clock they'll have the whole parking lot. Pretty much concludes my summary of the project and the analysis section. Questions if you have.
I just want to verify that the actual seating, the additional seats, those are seats that are just to serve the individual billiard tables.
That's correct. In fact, on the floor plan, ma'am, if you look up there on the floor plan, you'll see 13 pool tables in the center of and you'll look against the wall, you'll see the pool tables, the tables and chairs, and I believe there's a couple tables and chairs in the center. And and then after that, if you look over on the left side of that floor plan, you'll see a kitchen area, and that's we have only 8 seats there, that will be restricted to that.
Okay. And the food would be prepared on site?
Yes, the food is prepared on site. There's a small kitchen in the back.
All right. I have no further questions. Thank you. That was a very thorough report. I'd like to call forward Rafi Nazarian, please. Hi.
Morning. My name is Rafi Nazarian. This is 705 Balboa Avenue, Glendale, California 91206. I'm the architect for this project from the very beginning when we started this billiard establishment. And from the very beginning, I started working with Mr. Baxter, which was greatly helping through the process of the project, the planning, and helping for especially applying for the conditional use permit from the existing retail to a billiard establishment. And I'm grateful and thankful. Thank you, Mr. Baxter. And while we were doing that in 2010, getting approved for this billiard establishment, we always had this question raised, like, what's going to happen if people ask for kind of beer? Usually people pool, they get thirsty. This is kind of sports bar. They want some kind of drink. The adult people, they want beer and a little bit food. So we came up to have a little kitchen for now, in order to not make the case complicated and see after the opening of the billiard establishment how the business goes. Then we think about coming back and apply for beer and wine and for more seats. Of course, that's what happened now, because during this year and a half, more than a year and a half, time when billiard place was operating, we had absolutely no problem with neighbors, with neighbor businesses, especially with the parking. We maintained the parking lot. We spend a lot of money into restriping, cleaning. We always make sure like parking lot is clean because that helps our business to improve, to grow. If the parking was like lot was dirty and a lot of conflicts, so that would honestly affect our business. So part of our own concern was to make sure that there is enough lighting, there is parking lot is clean. We have a security guard which always walks through the parking lot and makes sure that nobody affects negatively to our business. And that was almost the conditions from the very beginning we had, and we kept the conditions. We respected those conditions all this time. And but honestly, a billiard establishment in that scale, in a place like that, where in the city where there are not enough billiard establishments, people really want some beer. That's very normal. And usually when they have a beer or they play for a few hours, they want to have some fast food, kind of finger food. I want to mention this is the city's concern was like this establishment does not become a restaurant or nightclub or tavern. Usually people go to tavern or nightclubs. They don't go for fast food place like here that we have. They want more adequate food, more decent food with their drinks, and nobody wants to hear all this noises coming from the pool tables, which other people screaming or playing. So automatically this would not become a restaurant or tavern or nightclub. Can't be. And otherwise not going to be a business. Can't business. We spend a lot of money on that billiard tables. They take a lot of space, and the only income, possible income, is just to rent the tables for playing. So our real intention is not turn this place to a restaurant because it doesn't make sense. Besides, there are other restaurants around. They're not doing very well because there is a lot of competition, very much big competition. So now we are applying for conditional use permit for sales of beer and wine only, not full bar, not full liquor, which is very typical to this business, and we really want your help to prove this. Besides, because of the number of seats, we triggered to the parking reduction application again, and the CUP for the billiards again. while we were there, we had no problem. Everything was perfect. People are very happy, and we don't think it's going to be any problem if we have additional seats. As Mr. Baxter mentioned, the seats are only for the same people playing the same pool table. So it's not like, oh, 4 people are playing the pool, there are another 4 people will come and use those seats. Those seats belongs to the pool table. It's part of the pool table, and just serves the same people because they usually have drinks, they have food, or they're party of 4, 2 are playing, or 1 is playing, other 3 or 2 are, sitting, waiting. The conditions from the beginning when we had, it's always was respected and kept until now. And if otherwise, that would not be the type of business we are working on, because business is already designed and established as a pool hall. So why we should spend so much money on the pool tables, taking 5,500 square feet of space, and then trying to sell some food and make some money on food or beer. It's not going to work. There is no way. So as the city is concerned, is the main purpose of this business is pool table and pool billiard hall, and the secondary or third, the beer and wine or little fast food would help to serve better to clients and patrons. And Mr. Baxter went through all this, findings. This is kind of 3 cases, but almost like 1 case. Very much attached to each other. If you need me to go through the findings, I can go if you really need that.
No, I think Mr. Baxter already went over them pretty thoroughly. The only question I do have for you is, have you've read the staff report and all the conditions
Yes,
for the
yes.
CUPs and then also for the parking
Yeah.
reduction permits? Do you have any comment with those?
Most of the conditions we faced before because it was part of the previous approval, and we have no problem. And I really appreciate Mr. Baxter's help and the approval of this case. And we are still willing to meet any other conditions if you come up with, but we don't see any problem to not cooperating with conditions. And conditions are very typical, very normal, and we feel responsible to do the best to meet those conditions. For
Okay. Thanks. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
just adding that we really waited a long time for this project, and we really spent adequate amount of money on this project, and it's a nice, beautiful place. It's not like a junky place as other places possibly could be. And if you don't help with this project, we can enhance the business, and then we possibly will go out of business somehow, someday, which is, it's not fair for us, because the intention is good intention, and people and clients are really very happy to this now.
Okay.
So I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yes?
Just noticed, did I? Oh, I did. Never mind. I thought I didn't put on the beer and wine. I didn't know if I had put a time on it. But I think I did for beer and wine. I don't think I did for the billiards. Anyway, so that may be something I forgot to add on the time. I see one that I did for the.
We do have a time on the parking reduction permit that matches the time for the operation of the business.
Yeah, the billiards. I don't know if
And
I
that-
put a time limit on the billiards, but on the alcohol, I did put a time limit on.
Right, and also on the parking reduction permit.
And I did on the parking reduction as well.
Yes.
Oh.
Because it's based on the fact that this business is open in the evenings when almost all of the rest of the businesses in the center are closed. I believe only the I think there's a gun shop, and then there's a organza place, and then there's a like check cashing, I
Yes,
believe,
check
that are
cashing up at the
open.
corner, yeah. They still
Right,
open
and
a little bit later.
They're open till like 8, I believe.
I believe they are.
Yeah. So, and then
Well, what I meant by time was expiration date. I don't think I
Oh.
put an expiration date. I just want to, the beer and wine, I have an expiration date for 10 years. I did not put one on the billiards. And I didn't put one on, I did not put an expiration date on the parking reduction, which I don't think that would be necessary, or the
No.
billiards would be necessary, but the alcohol, we normally have some type of restriction unless,
you're-
whatever your decision would be on.
Well, you are proposing 10 years.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And thanks for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that first.
That's fine. And I don't have any other cards. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Okay. Seeing none, and I've heard the findings. I can make all the findings that I've heard for the two conditional use permits and also the parking reduction permits. I think it's well outlined in the staff report and in the testimony given today. The conditions look complete to me, and therefore I am approving these projects, the two conditional use permits and also the parking reduction permit. And that concludes today's hearings. This hearing is now adjourned.